Hey, this is David Wolinsky back with another audio interview from the archives of NoDon'tDie.com. This time I'm bringing you the second half of my conversation with Ed Fries, who was the co-founder of the original Xbox project at Microsoft. We spoke on March 5th, 2015. If you'd like to read a full transcript of this conversation, you can check the link below. And also below, you'll see a link to my Patreon, which helps support the work that I'm doing, like this. Thanks. It's like, what do you think is weird about the games business?
I think it's weird about it.
Usually I open with that. So now we're at the beginning.
Here's the thing I see a lot happening right now.
Yeah.
Is that if you went back like 20 years, there was this trajectory that you could see.
Yeah.
Games are getting more and more expensive. Consolidation, less and less publishers, less and less developers, making less games, and that's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Now it's gotten almost to the absurd extreme.
Yeah.
Super high budget, very small set of developers. But what's happened in the last 10 years is the rise of China, digital distribution, mobile, okay, and I don't know, free to play, different business model. Okay, every one of those things is like, I mean, in each of those areas, it's like we've created companies that are bigger than the biggest companies. We used to think like, EA's big, Activision's big. Well, you should look at Tencent, or you should look at, what Supercell's doing in mobile, which is part of a bigger conglomeration.
Yeah.
And so it's like, for a long time, the AAA world kind of poo-pooed those, that's a little business, we're not that interested in. Now those little businesses became huge. But anyway, that's not my point. My core point is the last decade has sort of trained people in the game business to think that stuff is changing really fast. And everybody wants to know now what's the next change. And there may not be a next change. I mean, like the investors in particular, people I deal with sometimes, what's the next thing? So that's what you could see happening here if you look out. Everyone wants it to be VR. Why do they want it to be VR? Because they want another thing. There was this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing.
Talking about that during lunch.
And they want there to be the next thing.
It's just.
I mean, mobile free to play is a brutal business now. Very difficult,
Yeah.
And so, 2 years ago, that's where everyone wanted to be. Now you can't raise money to be in that space. I mean, but strap a thing to your face. Oh yeah, I'm there. And
You haven't tried that in a while.
and you go, well, yeah. I mean, there's all these problems.
Talking about Nintendo too, like I guess I'd be curious your take on this. Like I'm sure they're asking themselves, like, we tried this. You want this now? We tried this. Someone
like
lost
you're
their
talking
job.
about VR Boy. Or?
Yeah, someone lost their job over that, and it's actually the same thing. Like
Well,
Microsoft tried to bring out the tablet before people were ready for it, and
I do a whole talk where I go through I go through the history of technology, and I actually go all the way back
Timing
to
is
1800s, and that's what I say.
Yeah.
I say predicting the future is easy, predicting when is hard.
which, like, to your point, like maybe there will be a change that's coming. Like that. I think that's why we're seeing so many of these companies like teaming up, banding together, trying to find alliances. I think they're trying to like steady that foundation of like we all pushed as hard as we could to get this to work.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't work, I think it'll be 50, 60 years until we see that, or what? Maybe I'm exaggerating. It's going to be a while, I think, before we see another try the thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was talking to a guy known in the game business for a couple decades.
Yeah.
The other day, who runs a game development for a big Japanese mobile company. Very, very smart guy. Worked at all the companies, and he's like, I don't believe it will ever work. I was like, ever? It's like, wow, you're the most pessimistic. He's like, I worked on VR 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I know it really well, and I don't believe it will ever work. I don't know it as well as him, so maybe that's why I'm not that pessimistic.
Yeah.
But
I have the distinction of I interviewed for a position at Oculus last year. I interviewed 3 times over 5 months for a position. They decided to just eliminate, which either means I did that awesome at interviewing, or I convinced them of some stuff that I said, which was that I don't think if VR is going to take off, I don't think it's going to be games. I think games will come later, but I sort of feel like games have to catch up to what it is capable of, rather than, all due respect, like, let's just put the headset on like Master Chief's perspective
Yeah.
and set you loose. Like, there's, I'm sure you've tried it. It's capable of so much more than
Yeah.
that, and for that to be like the starting point, I feel like
So much more and so much less. I mean, in the sense that
you sound like me in that interview. They were
in the sense that
yeah.
pretty much every game genre,
Yeah.
everything we know about games, fails on VR. So, you know.
I tried to tell them. But I'm sure it's not just me who told them, but yeah.
So it's like we have to invent whole new games, which maybe we will.
So wait, so why does it fail in VR?
Okay, well, because you can't move, first of all.
It's kind of a sticking point.
So I'll just start there.
Well, you can't go anywhere else from there. So.
Okay, so you need to invent a game where you can't move.
Yeah.
Because if you move, you get sick. So, you know, that's a problem. Or if you move, that you have to move in the physical world to match what
Yeah.
you're moving in the virtual world, which means, you know, there's a reason with VR Boy that they put a little stand on it. And that's because they were terrified that someone was going to strap this thing to their head and then fall down the stairs. And so they wanted to make sure you had to be, that little tripod on that
Yeah.
machine that's the only reason it's there. Anyway, so yeah, there's people doing like dedicated facilities where you can walk around, that kind of thing. But in your house, you're not going to do that.
I remember in 2008, first GDC, out on this very floor out here, the Virtue Sphere.
Oh,
Does that ring a bell?
yeah.
It's like a giant
Yeah,
hamster
where you
ball
walk
that you
in
walk
it.
around in it.
I actually saw something even crazier than that at SIGGRAPH more than a decade ago.
Yeah.
And these were robotic floor tiles.
Okay.
And so imagine about a dozen or so robotic floor tiles.
Okay.
And you walk in any direction,
Yeah.
and they are slowly rolling you back.
Oh, jeez.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as you get near the edge of one will scurry around from the back and get in front again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you could constantly be walking on these
Yeah.
little robotic tiles that are shuffling themselves
Yeah,
under your
yeah.
feet and keeping you in a relatively small space.
That didn't take off.
Not yet.
Not yet. That's true.
I'll just say
Pending.
not
Pending.
yet about anything.
Well, but
You know, these guys are showing some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
That is, they're doing in health. They're doing some incredible physiotherapy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So people with missing limbs, people who've had strokes, that kind of thing,
Mhm.
using VR to your point earlier,
Mhm.
to treat people in those cases. Really fantastic
Yeah.
stuff. They want to figure out how to bring it to the game space, which is what I was just talking to them about. But their system, and this is the problem, one of the problems with VR, it's VR, it's AR, so it's got cameras that look out. It's a 3D depth sensing camera, so you can see your hands.
Mhm.
It's got a neural cap that reads your brain.
Okay.
Okay. All these, and you kind of need all those different pieces and probably more to actually
Do it right.
do it right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you're missing, you know, it's like as soon as you put on like Crescent Bay or Valve's, you know, really nice headset, you really feel like you're somewhere.
I'm trying that tomorrow.
Okay, well, you
Yeah.
really feel like you're there, and
Yeah.
then the more real it is, the more you miss that your arms aren't there, your
Yeah.
hands aren't there. And something goes through your body, it feels really freaky.
Weird.
Yeah, because you really believe you're there,
Mhm.
you know. And then how do you actually do that? And then as soon as you have your hands, what if I want to touch this, I want to feel it.
Yeah.
So then you have to have haptics.
Yeah.
So you have to have, okay, we got a 3D depth sensing camera, we have to have haptics, we have to have, you know.
Neural cap.
all the, I
a
mean,
headset, and sound.
yeah, and
We
so
want to replace everything that we basically get.
and those
for free.
technologies sort of more or less exist,
Yeah.
but to bring them all together and to sell them to a consumer at a real price,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's why I go 10 years, maybe.
Yeah.
And people are like, 10 years? I don't know, maybe at my age, 10 years doesn't seem that long.
No, I
I'm
think
probably
it's good, though.
optimistic.
I think,
you
I mean,
know?
I was saying 50. So you
yeah, I'm
are
probably
optimistic.
optimistic.
I mean, I don't know. It's not like we're saying people should not be experimenting and trying new things. Like, I guess I'm curious, like, from the software side of things, like, what do you think people could be getting more creative with?
I don't know, that's a good question. It's a hard question.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm honestly really optimistic about the game business and the future of the game business. I think, we have more gamers than we ever had before across a much broader age range. We finally won. Supreme Court said that our medium is an art form, that we're protected by the same First Amendment rights as books and movies, which I was there for the battle for that. I was deposed in a case in Washington State where the state government passed a law, signed into a law by the governor, that said we basically couldn't show violence against authority figures in video games. And it's like, well, I'm watching Law and Order right now on TV. That's okay. I can read a book about whatever, but I can't have it in a game. Right?
Yeah. That must have been an uncomfortable experience.
It's a lawsuit
around a lot of authority figures.
The ESA came in and battled and won. We won with prejudice. They had to pay our court costs, but it just shows how much progress we made. I mean, I guess because I've been around, I've seen the progress. It's like, okay, games can be art. I mean, the Smithsonian American Art Museum is collecting games. I have a game in there, which is weird. The Metropolitan Museum of Art has a game, and has been collecting games. And so all that stuff that we imagined, that games would be bigger than movies, that get bigger than music, that it would be a respected art form, that it would be, it's all happening. And I love the indie rise. I mean, I think incredible ideas are going to come out of that, incredible new things. So I'm actually really, really optimistic.
Yeah.
There's just, there is, I don't know.
I am too, but I mean, I also see, I have friends on the indie side of things also where, they're just struggling, and it's tough, and, it's true of any.
I mean, so one of the things that I should have counted when I was going through, digital distribution and all this other stuff is the rise of game engines. Okay, super important, because I mean, people can make games in Unity and other technologies with very little technical experience, and that opens us up in a huge way to people who've never been able to make games before, and that I'm sure is going to have just an incredible positive influence on the business, because we're going to get content we never would have had before. But does it make it hard? Absolutely. Because now, I mean, in the old days, there were only a few hundred people who knew how to do this stuff. Now anybody, anywhere in the world, can do it. A guy in Vietnam, a kid in his apartment in Vietnam, can make a game with a little flapping bird that gets everything just right, and he's a star. And I
reluctantly.
Reluctantly, and I love that. I think that's awesome. But does that mean life is easy for indies? No way. No. Now they're competing in a global environment against teams that maybe don't even have the technical expertise, but have a really cool idea. Yeah. That's trade-offs, I guess.
Do you think, like first party, do they do as much? I guess I'm not sure. Like, that's something I'm not really privy to as a writer. Is like, do they do things to help nurture or encourage like the ability to keep making stuff for them on an ongoing basis, or is it more focused that like we're working with you on this one project? And
usually when they sign a publishing deal, they want to have a long-term relationship, so usually there's terms in their contract that there'll be sequel rights and things like that, and usually the developers will have their own rights coming back. So it's like, if you're going to do, so the publisher may own the intellectual property, but the developer created it. But the developer may be able to say, if you're going to do a sequel to the game I made, I get to be first choice of the developer to make that sequel, that kind of thing. So you get both of those sets of terms, and they get negotiated about. But there's nothing a publisher wants more than to have a long-term relationship with a great developer. It just doesn't always work out, for the million reasons that things don't work out. Making games is really hard. I mean, it's a hard technical problem, and it's a hard artistic problem. And there's people issues. There's everything. And I think it's one of the hardest things there is to do, because it combines technology difficulty and artistic difficulty together. I think that's why it attracts some of the most talented people in the world, because of the challenge. It's just so hard.
Yeah, and there are other challenges, cultural stuff and stuff on top of that. So you've talked about developers, and we've talked about the audience. How do you feel like the media for games has shifted? And I guess you've seen more than I have.
Yeah, I'm only going to rag on one part of the media.
Me?
No, not you at all.
I'm here to defend myself.
It's not you at all, and it's not games at all.
Yeah.
The thing that has changed the most, from my perspective, is like I could do an interview with you, and you put it up, and we're having an interesting conversation, and I'm saying what I think are reasonable things. You maybe agree.
No, I do. I do.
And it'll go up, and you'll post a nice version of our conversation. Maybe you'll take out me using the word "like" 37 times. And
I will.
You know.
You can thank me. Yeah, I will do that.
Yeah. You know, and I like to work with people who make me sound better than I really am. The raw transcript is usually not the
streamlining it.
Yeah.
Even though I'm doing a transcript, yeah.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And it's all good, and it comes out, and it's all good. But what will happen today that wouldn't have happened 10 years ago or 20 years ago is 37 other sites will link to this article, okay? And they'll go through and they'll take the most controversial thing I say, okay? And they may not even quote it correctly. They may change the words that you wrote of
your words,
of my words, but they'll change them, and then they'll make that as the headline, and they'll have a short summary of it, and they'll link to your article, and that'll get like 10 times as much traffic as your thing will get, right? Do you know what I'm talking about?
But then that'll make you look bad, but then it also makes me look bad.
Right, and
it's also not true.
That's the only part. That's my only complaint about the media.
The games media?
Yeah, I like working with people like yourself. I've always been treated fairly, almost always.
I think you're liked. I think you're liked.
I feel like if people like
world.
you, they, you know, when they go through and they edit the transcript, they do it nicer than if they don't like you. I try to be, I try to be accessible and I try to be
accessible,
and I try to be reasonable, but that none of that applies to this sort of shadow world of journalism, and it's been really weird to see actually respectable sites go down that route, where you see like the name. This is probably a bad example, but I mean, I'll see like, a Huffington Post or maybe Time magazine sometimes even, or others where it seems like they're playing the same game to chase traffic.
Yeah.
And they'll do it to any story about anything. It's not about games at all. That's what I'm saying. But it's just, to me, it's the thing about dealing with the press that's changed so much, and I think it's turned people off. Because it's like now it's like risky to come and have a reasonable conversation with a reasonable guy who's going to write a reasonable article about it. Because So
well,
that's my only complaint.
No. I mean, it's a super valid one. Like, don't have to talk about Peter Molyneux, but like, it certainly says something for the state of things where a writer or someone sitting where I am sitting, saying to someone who's sitting where you are sitting, to start a conversation where the first thing is, do you feel you are a pathological liar? And I tweeted at the guy, and I was just curious, did you back Peter's game on Kickstarter?
Yeah.
No, he didn't. And I'm not quite sure what tire I was kicking at there. Like it seemed like there was some sort of personal. I don't know like what cause he's championing or what he felt like. What does that accomplish?
I don't know that guy very well.
I don't know him at all. I don't know Peter at all. I would love to talk to Peter.
I know Peter pretty well, and I'll mention that in a minute. But I don't know that reporter very well.
Yeah.
Is he British?
I'm not sure. John Walker, I think.
I've had experiences with the British press where they're super frank, and I just learned that's the way they work. I've even been on like Hard Talk or some TV show when we were launching Xbox, and they were exactly the same way. They're like trying to like go after you, and it was just like a different style of reporting that they use. And once you're used to it, it's okay. I mean,
don't you think Peter would be used to that?
Let's get back to Peter.
Not to punch holes in your theory there.
I'm just gonna tell the story real quick.
Okay.
So the very first time I was running the games group, and I was at E3 showing our first lineup of games, and it was the first lineup of games that we had. They weren't the best games, but they represented the state of the art of what we could do at that time. And I was going through wave after wave of reporters every half hour, and a British guy came in, and he sat through like the other reporters and took notes as I went through. He was very polite, and then at the end I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "I think it's shit." It was like, okay. But, you know, it was sort of their way, you know, not to generalize about all British press, but it's sort of their way of starting the conversation, and you know, it was provocative, but I was okay with it. I mean, I kind of embraced it. We had a good conversation about it, and what was good and bad, and where we were at, and how we could be better, and I was cool with that. So there's sort of an approach that different countries, different reporters use that's different. Now, as far as Peter goes, I don't think it was one thing. I mean, Peter has a long history of getting super excited about his games and inventing stuff on the fly, and the development team cringes because they have to go back and implement the stuff, you know. But he's amazing. He's an amazing guy. He's only ever been incredibly nice and generous to me, and I think he's honestly one of the nicest guys in the game business. That's from my experience. I just think he loves his games, and he has ideas all the time, and he can't help say ideas. Like, he'll be in the middle of an interview like this, and a new idea will come up, and he'll say, like, what if we had a dog? We're going to have a dog, you know?
Well, I think also, too, like, as a creative person, like, you're also, like, pitching ideas and testing them out all the time as well.
Absolutely.
And he's nothing if not consistent.
So he'll bounce ideas off press and see how they react. And that's just Peter.
Yeah.
I think what happened was, you know, he had trouble with the cube. He had trouble with, you know, the populist thing, Goddess. And so that's got to be a lot of pressure on him. And then there's the thing about this kid from the cube who didn't get his thing. And it's just like one thing after another. I felt like they were all piling on top of him.
Yeah.
And then that interview guy comes in. And I think if that had happened separately, you know, because he's been doing this for 20 years. He's always been making up ideas, and sometimes they end up in a game, and sometimes they don't. But I think it came at a time when he was just feeling very weighed upon. This was my take on it.
So this is unrelated, but is it an overreach if I ask? Could you ask if you'd be willing to talk to me for this?
I could.
I'd send a request through proper PR channels, but I have a feeling I sent one before this happened. And so you don't have to answer me now. I don't want to make you uncomfortable, like saying yes or no. But
I mean, I would be happy to ask him. I mean, I'd send him mail. I'm sure he'd look at the other stuff that you've done, but I mean, you saw some of those articles.
I can wait a couple months.
He was saying, "I'm not going to talk to the press anymore." And then he did another interview where he said, "I'm not going to talk to the press anymore."
Oh, did he?
Oh, yeah. He said it.
I mean, Jay-Z said he was retiring, right?
Justin Bieber.
And
so I think Peter will be okay.
I think so too. I think he'll come back, and it's. I don't know. It's weird. I don't have another question to ask you, and that was like not incredibly climactic.
Sorry.
No. It was my fault because I asked if you could do a favor for me. I don't know. Like, I guess you feel like you're feeling optimistic. Why do you think? Not to put you in the head of other people, but why do people seem to lose that optimism? As we sit here lording over GDC. Folks milling about looking for something to be interested in or excited about.
I don't know. I mean, games is hard. I guess it comes back to that. It's always been a hard business, and it's probably harder than ever. And either you're up for that or you're not. I mean,
Well, the other flip of it too is, did you see about EA this week?
no, it's the EA thing.
They shut down Maxis.
Oh, I did see that.
They reshuffled.
I did see that.
To your point, games are hard, and I think that ripples down the chain of command and the totem pole of the industry. And if they can't hold on to everything, then I don't want to use the word bubble, but I do get this sense that like something should change, and maybe it's the way money is being spent if it's not the creative output.
But I feel like in the past, as we've gone through this time of real change,
Yeah.
for every bad thing, there's been a good thing. Like, new funding sources have come in from China, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people now who are funded by China, where there wouldn't have been another option. It's great. It's been great for the business. Great for friends who can now make the game they've been dreaming of making.
Mm-hmm.
Kickstarter, crowdfunding, right? Another fantastic way. Valve, Steam Early Access.
Mm-hmm.
Just getting a closer connection to your customers, being able to fund games directly to the customer, bypassing the publishing infrastructure. Great. I mean, these have all been super healthy, fantastic developments. So I think things get harder, but then the other things are better. So I don't know. Weighing those two things, I'm optimistic. Yeah.